Tonight we're going to be doing a very important topic that will surprise some of you because it doesn't appear to be related to the series we're doing about morality and bioethics, but as you will see, it is very much related. I called it drug addiction, public enemy number one. Have you heard of that expression? That saying, public enemy number one? It should be. It should be considered an enemy. When we identify something as an enemy, then hopefully we will deal with it properly, aggressively, and do whatever it takes to bring it under control. Unfortunately, not everybody sees it as an enemy. Some people actually enjoy the drugs. It's their best friend. It's not an enemy. And what makes matters worse, there's an ongoing debate. If addiction to drugs is indicative of moral failure, or is it an illness? And as you will see, I don't think there should be any debate about this. There's definitely room for both. That this is definitely indicative of moral failure, and to some extent, especially addiction, it is an illness, or it has become an illness. Many of you perhaps who follow the news, you may have heard or may have read about another debate. Should we decriminalize it? That it's not a crime. Regulated. The government would be very happy in some ways. They would make more money, taxes. But it's not so simple. They realize the tremendous amount of damage that this has caused already, and who knows what more damage it will cause if it becomes legalized. So there's a camp that says they should legalize it, there's a camp that says no, and there's the pros and cons of both, but as we will see, it is not so simple. If drugs are considered an enemy, then they need to be treated as an enemy. The question is how, what approach to use, but don't be so quick to say that it should be legalized. In order to properly understand drugs, what it does, and why people succumb to it or enjoy it, we need to go back in history a little bit. If you go back in history, you will see this is not new. Throughout history, many cultures, civilizations, have used all kinds of drugs. American Indians used something called peyote. It's a kind of cactus, a small cactus that grows in certain parts of Mexico, southwestern part of the United States, that produces certain feelings of, I guess, ecstasy, pleasure. I'm not such an expert on the various effects, thank God. What each one produces and what it actually does to the physical body or to the mind. All I know is that people enjoy different kinds of drugs, whether they're natural or artificial, because of the feelings or sensation or experience that they get out of it. Mexicans, in the past at least, used all kinds of mushrooms that also had certain effects. Muslims, until this day, use hashish. And if you're from Iran and Afghanistan, you probably have seen tariaq, which comes from the poppy seed, right? Which is opium. Yeah. And then if you go back more in time, Zoroastrians used something called haoma, which is another herb that also produced all kinds of sensations and good feelings. Many times they were used in conjunction with religion. It was to be able to have a better feel, a better perhaps experience, a mystical experience. And the drug or the herb would somehow open up their awareness or their consciousness to the point that was not possible by any other means. In other words, it was somehow a way to help them gain awareness or another sense of experience. Exactly, yeah. Which the various drugs produced. These days, however, there is so many types of drugs, all kinds of drugs that you can't imagine, and each of them works differently, including one that's called LSD, that you may have heard of. When it came out, it claimed that it expands consciousness. So similar to the other drugs that I just mentioned, if that's the claim, then I could see why people would want to try it out. It appears to be something good. It expands consciousness. The problem with that is that, let's assume that there may be some gain, some benefit in the short term. There could be some gain with some of them. The problem is the long-term effects. What it does to the individual after many, many years, after prolonged use. I'm not even talking about addiction right now. I'm just talking about what it does to the physical body, what it does to the mind. That they didn't consider. That perhaps in the past they didn't even analyze. All they did was, well, it feels good right now, but down the road, perhaps they didn't even have a chance. They didn't live so long. And they figured, you know what, enjoy life while you can, without regard to the damage it does. Many studies have shown that this is perhaps the source of many of the ills of society. We're not just talking about mental disorders, depression, but even crime. All kinds of accidents occur as a result of various kinds of addictions. One of them being alcohol, by the way. Even though we're more focusing now on drugs, to some extent this does cover alcohol, which can be a big problem too. Marriages have fallen apart. People have lost their job as a result of alcohol. But drugs is much more dangerous than alcohol. I think more people have been affected by drugs than have by alcohol. And because of that, even though alcohol can be very dangerous to one's health and to one's surrounding, I don't think that many people are interested, or not as many, in alcohol as they are in drugs. It has to do with, of course, a personal preference, but to some extent, I mean, we all have a little bit of alcohol in our meals, especially on Shabbat. So we don't look at it and we don't see it as something so bad. And the reason for it is because, thank God, we can control ourselves most of the time, and we just have enough that we're happy, but we don't abuse it. But with drugs, even a little bit can kill you. That's one of the differences. In other words, one cannot compare the vice or the addiction to alcohol with drugs, because drugs can be much more problematic. If you look at the country, I'm not surprised if this country, the United States of America, has less productivity because of drugs. Because this is a fact. When you have a lot of people addicted to some drug, they're not going to be as productive. They're not going to be as interested in working hard. So I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if various countries in the world where this is a problem have suffered as a result. Not just society, but productivity-wise, by having this type of exposure, running rampant and uncontrolled. There's a 2012 study that I recently read that says as follows: almost 24 million Americans ages 12 and older, which is about 9.2% of the population back then, used illicit drugs or abused the kinds of medication that are almost pretty much equivalent to drugs if you take an overdose. 24 million Americans, almost 24 million, you know what that is?
No.
Have tried, have taken a lot of it or a little bit, makes no difference. So my question is, okay, why now more than ever? Why now more than before? Before it existed too, but now we have millions of people and we're actually seeing the effects. So what's going on today that is different than in the past? Anybody want to suggest what's so different about today? I mean, you're welcome to.
Life is harder for them.
What is that? Life is
Life
harder.
for
Okay.
them, so it's an escape for them.
Okay, life is harder, or one can say there's more tension today as well than in the past. Right. Anything else?
More readily available as well.
More readily available? Okay, could be. Yeah. Could be. But it's not so much about the availability, it's about the craving here. Why is there more of a craving for it now? See, availability could be that it was available in the past too, and maybe not even as expensive. There's a lot of emotional insecurity today. Okay? I mean, I've done a little bit of a study. I'm not just, coming up with this on my own. And this is something that is not only a problem in this country, it's a problem almost all over the world. So we're living at a time where there is more tension, there's emotional insecurity. But my preference is to focus on the lack of identity. Because to me, I'm coming from a totally different perspective here, as you will see later. All of this is true. It contributes to all kinds of cravings. People want a quick fix. But as you will see, one of the main problems is a lack of identity, a purposeless life. There's no meaning to life. When you have a purposeless existence, you know what this leads to? When a person doesn't have a reason for what to live, life has no meaning for him, it easily could lead to moral depravity. Depravity, by the way, comes from the Latin pravus, crooked, perverted. People are straight. God creates people straight. But they become crooked. They become perverted. We need to explain how and why, but that's the fact. Moral depravity, therefore, means that man, unfortunately, twists the law, perverts the law to satisfy an urge, a craving. And he does that more easily if his life is purposeless, no meaning whatsoever. Well, now you can understand. If there is moral depravity, there's less of regard for laws. People are not going to follow laws. It's against the law. Moral depravity means to make things crooked. In other words, man becomes crooked. His views become crooked. Then he loses respect for the law. He disregards the law. To make matters worse, he becomes an irresponsible person. And that's very, very key to understanding the behavior of an addiction, of any addiction. It basically is equivalent to irresponsibility. But it makes sense, right? There's no purpose for which to live for, right? He feels better in doing certain things or in eating certain things. That brings him happiness, that satisfies him, makes him feel good. He doesn't feel the need to be responsible. So it can happen very easily. The man will not necessarily evaluate properly the consequences of his actions, especially the long-term consequences of his actions. If it pleases him now, it brings him pleasure right now. As they say in Judaism, the evil inclination pays cash. God pays you with a post-dated check. I'm going to pay you and compensate you in the world to come after you die. Whereas the evil inclination says, I pay you cash. You enjoy now. Well, what are you going to go? What do you prefer, a post-dated check or cash? So it becomes obvious what the propensity will be, or what the tendency will be for people to choose, even though they have a choice, which we're going to talk about soon. They do really have a choice. But it's easier to take cash, to take immediate pleasure, immediate gratification, as it is called, and not think about the future, especially when it's purposeless. Life has no meaning. The existence is purposeless. So what happens in a vacuum? When there's no purpose, there's a vacuum. Man, the human being, tries to fill it. And as I said before, he tries to fill it with a quick fix. Okay. Now what's wrong with a quick fix? We use microwaves. It's a quick way of warming our food. So what's wrong with a quick fix to a problem? It's a fix, isn't it? It solves the problem. A person is depressed. You have a headache. You take medication and it fixes the headache and removes the headache, takes it away. So this makes you feel good. It makes you happy. It broadens your imagination. Again, there's all kinds of drugs out, they do all kinds of things. It alters your perception and your mood. So why not? It's a quick fix right away. The problem is, there's three problems that I thought about with quick fixes. Number one, we're talking about a quick physical fix to a physical craving. Remember, Judaism teaches that man consists of a physical body and a soul. So what are we satisfying here? We're only satisfying, perhaps, the physical craving that we have. Just like you want to eat, you're hungry. So you satisfy it. Now, physical craving is important. We need to eat. So why can't we have a drug? Well, if you think a little bit more about it, is it really necessary? A physical craving, which, regardless of which one it is, doesn't last. How long can you go on eating? After a while, you stop. Just about every physical craving we have has a limit, except for money. For some reason, people are always hungry for more. But that's a separate problem, another topic for another time. Why is money something that never satisfies us? As they asked John Paul Getty once, the millionaire, how much is enough? So he said, oh, just a little more. With money, you never stop wanting more. But that's a different kind of problem. Physical cravings have a limit. After a while, you stop. So is this real? Is this something that I have to really have? Do I really need it? Can I justify it? Remember, it's physical. It doesn't last forever anyway. After a while, you feel satisfied. And I don't know after how many hours, you're going to want it again. Yeah, but it's limited. It will not solve your problems forever. Huh? Hunger is satisfied. You're going to come hungry again hours later. So this is not a real fix. It's a temporary fix, but it's not a real fix. So think about it. Is it really worth it? Does it really pay? Second problem, you think it's a fix? It's going to ruin you. It's going to destroy you, God forbid. So it's not a fix. You think it's a fix. It may ruin you. You ruin your family. Cause you to lose a job. Ruin your life. A lot of people's lives have been ruined. Professionals, intelligent people, all types of people. Did it fix them? No, in the end it ruined them. So it's temporary. It can ruin you, not fix you. And number three, which is just as bad or perhaps even worse, it will transform you into a slave. Addiction. So even if it's a fix, even if it's good, but you're going to become addicted. And I call this addiction modern day slavery. Yes. People who become addicted become slaves. Slaves of whatever craving it may be, whatever drug it is. And this addiction is a separate problem. So we're not only talking about the damage it does, you're going to be dependent on it. You're going to be dependent on something. You don't want to have control of when to buy or when not to buy. I mean, you see a nice piece of steak, you're in the mood of having a steak. You check your wallet, can you afford it or not? You know, it's not something you have every week, unless you can afford it maybe. You can decide if to have it or not. You're not addicted to it. Here, if a person becomes addicted, you know what this is going to do? It's going to cost them, they say in English, an arm and a leg. Is that the expression? It's going to cost them a lot of money, this addiction. I mean, what happens if he doesn't have the money? He's going to steal it. The Torah has a similar scenario, a hypothetical scenario, of a child growing up like that. He's called a ben sorer umoreh, a rebellious child, that has certain weaknesses, loves to eat and drink, and be merry, and will do anything to get a hold of the money he needs to satisfy those cravings, even stealing from his own parents, and eventually even killing. That's exactly what happens in society, is happening in society today. People who are very addicted to this have unfortunately committed all kinds of crimes to get a hold of this drug that they've become addicted to. They've become slaves. They're no longer free people. What a shame. The human being is not an animal. He shouldn't be an animal that only functions by instinct. He has free will. He's the crown of creation, created in the image of God. For him to succumb so low, to become a slave, what a shame. To become like an animal, basically, where he has no free will. He loses pretty much his free will. He can't make decisions anymore. He has no inhibitions. He can't follow the law. He loses control. The problem with drugs doesn't just begin at the age of 50. Even though lately there is a study that more and more people over the age of 50 are trying drugs. They're trying them out. They're curious, or maybe they feel they have a need for it. But in reality, it really begins during the adolescent age. During adolescence. Why adolescence? What kind of a stage in one's life is adolescence? The teens. What's happening there? There's a lot of development going on in the body, in the personality. He's looking for acceptability. He's looking for emotional attachments. Right? He's hungry for emotional attachments. So that's when it all begins. It is a turbulent stage. It is it can be very turbulent, where these children or young men are susceptible, very susceptible to all kinds of issues, all kinds of vices. So what do we see so far? There is no debate. There is really no debate about how much damage the drugs will cause the individual and society as a whole. It is also clear to anyone who's unbiased about it that what this really is indicative of is that this individual who's addicted is surrendering to appetite gratification. That's all it is. In reality, it's not because it's something good and healthy and will give him more awareness. It's really much more an appetite than anything else. But the bigger problem is that when people take this on a regular basis, it disconnects them from reality. All right, So if there's no debate about the damage it does, all it is succumbing or surrendering to an appetite, and it's disconnecting individuals from reality, then why should there really be a debate about whether this is right or wrong? Is not the question, whether to legalize it or not. Why should there be a debate? It needs to be recognized as an evil, as we said earlier on. If we don't recognize the enemy, we're not going to fight it. We're not going to do what it takes. It has to be identified, recognized as an evil. After all, there's no debate about the damage it does. Why is there a debate, nonetheless? The reason why there's a debate, or part of the reason why there's a debate, there's all kinds of angles on whether to legalize it or not. And I'm not going to get into all the details of the arguments for or against legalizing it. But there's something deeper here than on the surface. And what's at the core of this argument is an old debate of whether man really has free will, or whether we're dealing with what they call psychic determinism. Determinism, or the deterministic camp, was an old camp, philosophical camp, that claimed that everything is determined from above. You're born with certain weaknesses, you can't change them. That's the way you are, and that's what you have to live with. Then there's the camp of free will. Of course you can choose. Nothing is determined. Judaism makes a compromise here and says that certain things are predestined or determined from above, and certain things are up to us. And that's very important, because free will is basically why we are judged, why we're accountable, why we need to be responsible. If there's no free will, then it's not my fault. So this has to be made clear. But because some people still subscribe to the camp of psychic determinism, in other words, that there's at least a certain degree of, I guess, weaknesses that are inherited, that one is born with, they claim that this is an illness. Getting back to what we were saying before. Remember? Some say it's an illness. Wait a minute. It wasn't an illness in the very beginning. It has been allowed to become an illness when it became an addiction. Yes. So what I would suggest is that the two of them are right. It is an illness, and it is, to a certain level, also a moral failure, because human beings do commit mistakes, right? Make the wrong choices. So they both are correct. But don't treat it as an illness at the very start. It's a bad decision. Bad decision because we do have free will. We're not just born with a certain weakness and that's it. We can't do anything about it. Once you say that, that means it's not your fault. Therefore, because it's the two of them, a moral failure somewhere along the line, and an illness, so I would suggest, yes, because of that, we need to attack it from various angles. We need to use all kinds of approaches, not just one approach. People need to be educated. People need help. People need all kinds of assistance in this way to be able to overcome this weakness. But once you legalize it, that means you're saying it's not an enemy. It's just part of life. People have weaknesses. People have cravings. They are tempted, just like prostitution. Some will go for it and some will not. Yeah, but this is very, very different. Look at the long-term effects. Look at the damage that it does. This is enemy. Treat it as public enemy number one. You know what is public enemy number one for many Americans? Inflation. Yeah. What will determine who they vote for? Who they want the next president? Whoever promises. Remember, promises doesn't deliver necessarily, but promises that he will fix the economy. Economy is definitely important and on people's mind. Obviously. So inflation is a problem. Recession is a problem. Drugs? Yeah, I guess it's also a problem. No. It's an evil. It's a wrong. It is one of the worst evils if it does that much damage. So this has to be brought to the attention of everyone on how bad this is. On the other hand, it does have to be tackled in various ways, not just in one way, by making it illegal. Because it could become difficult to prosecute, to find all the offenders. But a country that is interested in maintaining law and order, in fostering better relations amongst the people who live in the country, in other words, not to have so much crime and to have better grades in school for the students to do better. A country that wants to prosper and not want to stay stagnant needs to promote certain things to motivate people to want to compete, to want to strive for something, and to obviously to have certain things under control. Otherwise, the human being can get carried away. He can become an animal. So if we are cognizant of this, then we need to take all the measures necessary, all of them, whatever it takes, to deal properly and successfully with an enemy. So it needs to be made clear that we do have free will. We do make choices, and sometimes we may make the wrong choice. And that could turn out to be a very expensive choice. The way to properly deal with it is as follows. The rabbis tell us, Al tihi rasha b'fnei atzmecha. Never accuse yourself of being a rasha. One interpretation of that saying, that the rabbis say, never accuse yourself or never consider yourself. Don't call yourself an evil individual or somebody who's bad or weak. It's not just because the rabbis were concerned about low self-esteem. One interpretation of those words is, don't think of yourself as a lost case. Don't think of yourself as someone that has no way to be cured. Don't think of yourself as an evil man. You're a good man. You have great potential. Perhaps you've made mistakes. Perhaps you haven't been guided properly. But don't think of yourself ever as a lost cause or a lost case. You can always improve. You can always get out of whatever predicament you got into. So this is an important idea, that every human being, Jew or non-Jew, has to continuously remember that he has potential. Rabbis go on and tell us that God will never impose on us a challenge or make of us demands that are insurmountable, that we cannot deal with. It's not fair. Whatever challenge he gives us, because we can handle it, but we need guidance. We need to be taught. We need to focus on certain things and not be distracted. That, yes, but there's no challenge that we are going to be facing that we cannot deal with properly. So this is another valuable lesson. If we have the challenge, we were given the challenge, that means we can handle it. When it comes to drugs, perhaps we can even say that the Torah warns us, be very careful and watch your health. This vessel of ours called the body that contains the soul, hopefully will operate or will function for many, many years to come if we take good care of it. And God forbid, if we have certain habits that are dangerous or risky, right? It could be a problem. We could be going against this edict, or I should say this law. We could be going against the biblical prohibition of not taking care of ourselves. So drugs is not only dangerous because of what it does to society, at least for a Jew. The Torah warns us, you got to be careful with this physical vessel, this body that God gave you. Take care of it. You have a certain mission to accomplish. You can't accomplish this mission if you ruin it. You ruin your body. you're destroying it. There's a prohibition against causing any harm, any physical harm to yourself and to others. So there's no doubt that people need help in order to be able to do the right things and stay out of trouble. It's not something that we can always manage on our own. We do need help. But the question is, what kind of help? What could really contribute? What kind of help can contribute towards a young man who's growing up, who wants to do the right things, wants to stay out of trouble? What kind of help can he get? I'm separating this from the help that somebody needs after he's already addicted. That is already a different kind of a help. That there's professional help to rehabilitate him, to get him out of this addiction, to free him, which is possible, by the way. Even if he's already addicted, it's very difficult. But that is a different kind of help, which is really left more for the professionals. Even though I may say a word or two about that, I just want to focus more on the help that we all need as we're growing up to avoid these pitfalls to begin with. Shlomo Melech, Solomon tells us in Mishlei, Gam belo da'at nefesh lo tov, that if one has no da'at, no knowledge, then that is no good for the nefesh, for the soul. Don't stay an ignoramus. Learn. Fill your mind with knowledge. Without knowledge, it's very dangerous. When one has no knowledge, he cannot be properly focused on what he needs to be focused. He doesn't have a good sense of what is important and what is not important, what should be a priority and what not. He loses out a lot. Rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of Our Fathers, En bur yerechet v'lo am haaretz chasid. A bur, an uncultivated person, cannot be God-fearing. V'lo am haaretz chasid, a person who's an ignoramus, who's not learned, cannot become pious. In other words, in order for an individual to grow spiritually, to become a better person, more refined individual, he needs to learn. He needs to have knowledge. Knowledge, of course, about God. Knowledge about the purpose of life, the meaning of life. And not just stay empty-headed. Because that head is going to want to fill itself with something else, which may not be so healthy. As Maimonides points out, a lot of the troubles and the ills that affect people result many times as a result of boredom, not having anything to do. What are kids doing these days? And even some adults. I don't know if it's still called Nintendo games, as they were in the past. All kinds of video games. Games, it's all about games. This is not about learning. This is not about filling your life with purpose. Just playing, killing the time with nonsense. It gives them a momentary satisfaction, but it doesn't really give them direction in life. And without that direction, they are susceptible to all kinds of ills. Even if a person learns, it may not be enough, because at the root of the problem is a very important saying that the rabbis tell us, that many people don't even realize, is that avda behefkeruta nihare. A slave prefers a free lifestyle. Even though he's a slave, there are certain liberties that he has. He's not so responsible. He doesn't have to watch out for certain things. The rabbis explained that a slave is in a situation or in a position where he doesn't have certain concerns, where he allows himself all kinds of things that may not be morally acceptable, because he's a slave. So, at the root of the problem is that the human being sometimes would prefer this kind of a lifestyle of being a slave, in other words, not minding that he is dependent on certain things, on certain cravings that he has, but he doesn't have to be responsible. He doesn't have to watch out. He's not accountable. So at the root of the problem is a certain element within the human being, every human being, that he just would rather do whatever comes to him without feeling bad about it. And that's, of course, all coming from the evil inclination. We sometimes forget that we have a constant battle in us between the good inclination and the evil inclination. And that evil inclination that we mentioned earlier is the one that's convincing us that this kind of a lifestyle is best for you. It's easy. You don't have to follow all the rules by the book. Just live your life, enjoy it. You only live once, they say. The evil inclination says. You die later anyway. You might as well enjoy it. This is where Judaism comes in. Judaism tells us liberty, freedom. True liberty and true freedom is not that you can do anything you want. For one to really be free, you have to be free from your evil inclination, because he makes you a slave. You don't even realize it. You want to be a master. You want to be the one in control so that you can make free choices. You don't want him to decide for you. And that's what you're doing if you're succumbing to the evil inclination. You let him, your physical cravings, decide for you. For those who want a little bit more of an elaboration of this topic of who's the master and who's the slave, there's a lecture called Who's the Master and Who's the Slave, where I point out the weaknesses of the human being and how he just sometimes lets himself be controlled by the evil inclination, where he really has a chance to be the master if he chooses to. So ultimately, Judaism wants man to be free. Judaism wants the Jew to be a master over his physical appetites, to control them, not to eliminate them, sanctify them, channel them properly. And that is why if you look at drugs and you ask yourself, wait a minute, God, why did you make these things? Why did you create these things? And the answer is, they serve a purpose too, medicinal. Yeah, but they're dangerous. No, they're only dangerous if you don't know how to use them properly, if you exaggerate their use. The problem is people don't know their limits. If it's given in the right amount, it could be effective, as we know many of them are, in eliminating pain. And unfortunately, some people have a lot of pain. Or if you have to go through surgery, they want to put you to sleep. And they better put you to sleep, depending on what they do to you. Otherwise, you won't be able to take the excruciating pain. So there's all kinds of things in nature that God created for a purpose. Everything has a purpose. The coffee bean. You think God had nothing better to do than create a coffee bean? What is it for? Well, it serves a purpose. Coffee is good for you, they say, as long as you don't overdo it. Everything in life. There is an expression in Yiddish. Jede Sache, was ist zu viel, ist nicht gut. Anything which is too much, which is exaggerated, is no good. Except for the Torah, of course. Too beautiful is not good. Too smart is also not good, right? Anything which is too much, exaggerated, could be a problem. So God created something, it's there for a purpose. We may not always know the purpose. We may abuse it, exaggerate it, but it's there for a reason. So what are we going to gain the moment that we control our cravings and our temptations? What do we gain? We gain objectivity, we gain clarity. We're able to gain a certain level of control and discipline in our lives. Once we've gained those, it helps us. It helps guide our life better. You know how many people don't have that discipline, don't have that control? They lose their temper all the time. Once in a while, if you lose your temper, you can get away with it. We can forgive you. But if a person loses his temper all the time, what does that tell you about this individual? He's a slave of his anger. He has no control. So ultimately, we want to be masters of our fate. We want to be in control of ourselves. If we learn and we control our appetites, our physical appetites, we have a better chance of being able to control our lives. We will gain discipline. We will gain responsibility. These are the items that are lacking. These are the things that are missing in someone who's taking drugs all the time. They're so important. Because without the discipline, without the responsibility, without the proper focus, how much can you expect of him? But remember, it's not only that. Its purpose in life, the meaningful life, is also very significant. But at least it's a start. Gain control over your appetite. Learn how to control yourself. That's so important. People have a hard time dieting because they don't have control. They love food. Right? Control is very, very important. And it's possible. It's doable. You have to make a decision. You have to decide. It's never too late. Haven't you heard of people who weighed 600 pounds and lost 300 pounds? It took them a long time, but they did it. You can see beautiful pictures before and after. And it's incredible. They look so different. They're so happy. They're in disbelief that they actually did it. What did it take? A decision plus some help. Help is important, we said before. Guidance. To do it on your own may be very difficult. But you have to want to. Unfortunately, people don't want to. They're just happy being slaves. Well, they want to be slaves. There's nothing you can do for them. We have to convince them to be masters, not a slave. To be a servant of God, yes. But not to be a slave of your evil inclination. One of the greatest benefits that we will gain when we have clarity and we have self-control and we're able to control our cravings, our physical cravings, is that all of a sudden you will be able to listen to your soul. Everybody forgot about the soul. We've been talking about the physical body, but there's a soul there. And you wonder, well, wait a minute, doesn't the soul have a say? Doesn't the good inclination have a say? What do you say? We're only listening to the evil inclination. What about the good inclination, which is in the soul? Why don't we hear what he has to say? Most people are not listening to what the good inclination has to say. They're not listening to the soul. That soul is a little bit extinguished. It's in the back seat. Because when the physical body is overemphasized, when one has no control over his physical cravings, and that's all you think about is, I want a bigger house, I want the latest car, right? All the comforts, that's all physical, that's all materialism. He's not going to listen to the soul. He's going to forget about that he has a soul. When one, therefore, brings all that materialism under control, all of a sudden he's able to hear his soul. And the soul says, I'm hungry too. I want something too. And what the soul wants is something completely different. The soul wants to connect with God. The soul wants to do good things. The soul wants to accomplish something. It wants to contribute. The soul has a whole different agenda. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with materialism. So, you wonder now why people are not happy, even though they have all the money in the world? Because happiness is not acquired through money. Happiness is something that belongs to the soul. Happiness is not a physical craving. It's not a piece of steak. It's the soul that is going to be happy. And if people are just throwing money and filling their lives with pleasures and comforts, that's not going to make them happy. Maybe just for a few minutes. How come there's so many people who have all the money, big homes and mansions, and they're not happy? Movie stars are on drugs, but they have tons of money. They have everything. They can have anything they want. No, because they forget. Happiness is in the soul. And the soul is not getting what it needs, so they're never going to be happy. So, what's going to make one happy? What's going to make the soul happy? Torat Hashem temimah mishivat nafesh, the pasuk in Psalm says. The Torah of Hashem is pure, is complete. It restores the soul. Torah is guidance, spiritual guidance. That is what restores the soul. That's what's going to make us happy. And once you restore that soul, you're going to really have a real fix, a spiritual fix, a religious experience. Because that fervor of the soul, that divine spark, wants to connect with the eternal flame, with Hashem. And that fervor, if one begins to feel that fervor, that excitement, he's feeling something spiritual. He's feeling something real. Something that it's worth our time and effort to invest in, to make sure that that flame doesn't extinguish, because that is what's going to give us clarity in life. That's what's going to direct us. That's what's going to make us happy. Spirituality. Just like to end with what Marx said. I think they attribute it to Marx, you know, the communist. He said that religion is the opium of the masses. And he didn't mean it in a positive way. He meant it's a good thing to control the masses, you know, calms them down. Is he right or wrong? He's right and he's wrong. He's right because, of course, religion can control. It has a certain level of control. But he's wrong. Because all religion really does is offer a framework for how to live one's life. But it depends what he does within that framework. What are the teachings of that religion? Just to belong to religion is not enough. What is that religion going to teach you? What are the values that you're going to adopt as a result of believing in God? Just to believe is not enough. Are you going to be guided really by it? Or by money? There's a lot of religious people who are sold on money. Unfortunately, what is corruption? Bribes and all and the like. Money. But they're religious. They go to church or they go, or depending on your religion. So religion is not enough. It's a framework. So it's important. It's a framework, especially if you're sincere. But it depends on the teachings. Remember what we said before. If you leave that head empty of teachings, of values, then it's worthless. Then maybe it's just an opium. Maybe. It depends what the teachings are. If you adapt those teachings, if you implement, if you practice what you preach, then it can make a world of a difference. It's not going to be just an opium. It's going to be a real guide. It's going to be a real experience, a spiritual fix. So what do we do with those who are addicted? Already, we said before, never lose hope. I very much like the saying that they use for alcoholics. For those who are addicted to alcohol, they say that there's a big sign when you come to get help that the elevator is broken. Use the 12 steps. In other words, there's no quick fix. There's no elevator or quick fix to rehabilitate yourself. You need to take the 12 steps. And people have gotten a lot of help out of those 12 steps. And the same with drugs or any other vices, weaknesses. People need the help. And if you follow certain steps, you'll get there. There's no quick fix once one is already addicted. It's always easier and better and wiser to prevent the problem to begin with. And when do you start preventing it? With children. There's a famous story with the Baal Shem Tov, the great Baal Shem Tov. A father comes to him and started complaining that his son was getting carried away and deviating from the norms and just becoming very difficult to control. What should I do? Rabbi, the Baal Shem Tov tells him, love him even more now than ever. Show him more love than ever. Love. Love is something that is unfortunately lacking in many homes. The children are not getting enough love. They're seeking, therefore, love elsewhere. This is also the problem with many relationships between husband and wife. And this is a problem that's affecting all of us to an extent. Some more and some less, because we live in this society. We're busy, right? Don't think we are exempt or somehow immune of the problems just because you belong to a religion or a certain faith. You live in this generation, you're going to be affected, some more and some less. So we have to control it. We have to be cognizant of this problem, and we have to take whatever measures necessary to restore our soul, that the soul should be in control. not the physical body, should make the decisions. And then we have a better chance. So to begin, you begin with the children. You show them the love. You give them the proper guidance. You make sure they have good friends, and make sure that you're vigilant. Vigilance is a very important condition to succeed in not only in raising children, but in taking care of yourself. If you're not vigilant over yourself, that evil inclination will ambush you. Yeah. All of a sudden, out of nowhere. Be vigilant. He's out to get you. He's also enemy number one. He's the biggest enemy of all, actually. He's the one that gets us into trouble to begin with. So be aware of that. Be vigilant. One has to be careful not to overdo materialism. Materialism is that other problem of this generation that causes all kinds of problems. There's a whole lecture about that we gave several months ago. How it leads to all sorts of problems, all sorts of trouble, materialism. Anybody who's unfortunately in this mess needs to remember it's possible to get out of it with the proper help, but a decision has to be made, and that decision only the individual can make. We cannot make it for him if he's already an adult. And that decision needs to involve something called burn your bridges. Usually burning your bridges is not a good idea. You want to stay in touch with your friends in the past, your boss in the past. But here, you need to burn your bridges. You need to forget about the past. You need to forget about the habits. You need to just start all over again. That is the attitude that one has to have if he wants to have a better life. Is not to worry so much about what happened in the past. Burn those bridges. Get away from it. And you can do it with the right help and with the help of God, of course. Just to finish up, there's definitely a lot of good help out there, professional help. But for a Jew, it is important to remember what the rabbis tell us. God says to us, yes, I created an evil inclination. Barati Yetzer Hara. But Barati Torah Tablim. I also created the Torah as an antidote to this evil inclination. A Jew has a greater responsibility to use this guide, this manual of instructions on how to live his life, full of so much valuable advice. If all he were to do is to learn it on a daily basis, this would be better than any vitamin, better than anything he can do for himself. To regularly study Torah on a regular basis, a few minutes a day, to study the morals, the ethics, to be inspired from the many, many stories from individuals who lived such a beautiful life. There's so much to learn from the successes of others. Don't look around at all the people in this generation because you will see a lot of failure. Look to the Torah. Look to the many individuals, to your forefathers who showed such great self-sacrifice, such devotion, and get inspired from that. That can only come from learning, from filling our minds with knowledge, with good knowledge, with Torah. And for the non-Jew, it doesn't have to be Torah. It could be anything that is spiritual, anything that is inspirational, anything that is ethical, morals and values. But the bottom line is still going to be the same, Jew or non-Jew. A meaningful life. Life has a purpose. What are we here for? Think about it. Take the time to think about it. This will help us stay objective, stay online, gain clarity, and God willing, more than anything else, it will give us the strength to become masters, to be able to defeat the evil inclination, and God willing, to also do the will of God. Amen.